The river had sustained the village for generations, its fish fed them. Its waters nourished their fields. But the same current that gave life also claimed countless lives. They called the bend the deadly riverbend, where the fog never lifted and deaths never ceased. Some said it was cursed. Others whispered of pale hands reaching from the depths, clutching at the living, dragging them below. And then, on one fateful night, the whispers ceased to be legend. The curse awoke. Chapter 1: The Deadly Riverbend. Night fell over the small riverside village. The air was heavy with the suffocating heat of July, and the wind carried the fishy stench of mud and moss. The river's surface shimmered with moonlight, rippling gently as though whispering the secrets of something lurking in its depths. The villagers had long called the bend in front of the communal temple the Deadly Riverbend. That name was not passed down without reason. For generations, people had lost their lives there, young or old, swimmer or non-swimmer alike. Those in boats capsized, those who tried to wade across sank, and even those who merely stood by the shore washing their feet were swept away. The children often whispered among themselves, "There are river ghosts down there. They wait for people to come near, then grab them and drag them under. Whoever gets caught will never surface again." The adults only shook their heads at such talk, but their eyes always flickered with fear. The endless chain of unnatural deaths weighed on the whole village. One man who had once witnessed a drowning recounted how the victim flailed violently before going under, as if trying to shake off an invisible force clutching his legs. The man's eyes bulged wide, mouth agape, but the only sound that escaped was a ghastly bubbling. That night, an unusual fog rolled in, thick and low. The river, usually calm, began to ripple and churn. Fishermen returning late squinted into the mist, muttering uneasily. Strange, no wind, yet the water stirs. Suddenly, faint laughter echoed across the river. It wasn't joyous laughter, but a wet, broken sound, half sobbing, half cackling. The dog outside the temple barked and howled, fur bristling. Chickens fluttered wildly in their coops, wings thrashing in panic. Through the milky mist, a shadowy figure floated on the river's surface. Long hair hung down, dripping wet, covering its face. The figure neither sank nor floated fully, but drifted eerily, pale arms stretching upward, beckoning someone from the shore. A drunken man, staggering home, caught sight of the apparition. He rubbed his eyes, but then, as if entranced, stumbled closer to the water. Through the haze of liquor, he heard a whisper clearly. "Come here, come down with me." The water bit into his flesh with an icy chill as he waded deeper. When it reached his chest, something unseen suddenly coiled tightly around his legs. He screamed, thrashing, "Help, help me!" But in the night, his cries were swallowed by the roar of surging waves. Moments later, the river was calm again, as though nothing had happened. From the darkness, faint laughter drifted across the shore, sharp and bone-chilling. The deadly riverbend had just claimed another victim. Chapter 2: The Death in the Night. The next morning, chaos erupted in the village. They discovered the body of Lou, the drunken man from the night before, floating right at the deadly riverbend. His corpse bobbed in the water, eyes bulging, mouth wide open as though still screaming for help. His skin was ashen gray, both hands torn and bloody, fingernails broken and clogged with mud and moss. Most horrifying of all, his legs were swollen and bruised, purple marks sinking deep into the flesh as though bound tightly by invisible ropes. The villagers gathered on the bank, faces pale with dread. Someone whispered, "See, the river ghost dragged him down. No drowning leaves marks like those." An old woman covered her mouth, tears streaming. "I heard it last night, a voice calling. Come here. I knew something terrible was coming." The corpse was hauled ashore and laid on the sand. Under the morning sun, people recoiled at the sight of strands of slimy moss still caught between the man's teeth, dangling grotesquely from his open jaw. The young men of the village, strong and seasoned swimmers, exchanged uneasy glances. One spat on the ground and muttered, "Old Lou drank a lot." "Sure, but he was a strong swimmer. I've seen him survive capsized boats before. How could he drown like this?" Silence followed. Deep down, they all knew the answer, though none dared to say it. Among the crowd, little Tin, son of a fisherman, clutched his father's hand, voice trembling. "Papa, I saw it. I saw a pale hand grab old Lou's leg. I was so scared. His father jolted, quickly covering the boy's mouth. But too late, others had heard. The crowd shuddered, horror spreading like wildfire. Back at Lou's home, grief filled the air. His wife fainted when they brought the body back. Children wailed as incense smoke choked the room, the heavy beat of the funeral drum echoing across the village. Yet before the day ended, rumors spread like a curse. Someone swore they had seen Lou's shadow standing by the river. His face was pale, eyes vacant, water dripping from his legs, each drop glistening red as blood in the sunlight. Fear tightened its grip. People whispered in terror. The river ghosts not only drown you, they turn you into one of their own. That night, the riverside village suffocated under the weight of dread. No one dared step outside. Even the dogs barking trembled and faltered, as though they, too, feared what prowled the waters. The deadly riverbend had only begun its harvest. Chapter 3: The Legend of the River Ghosts. That evening, in a small thatched hut at the edge of the village, people huddled together around the fire. Smoke stung their eyes. The firewood cracked and hissed. But no one dared laugh or speak loudly. The air was heavy, stifling with fear. Old Madame Dew, the eldest in the village, her hair white as snow, eyes clouded yet gleaming when speaking of the past, cleared her throat. She let her gaze sweep slowly across the frightened faces, then spoke in a raspy voice. "You are all too young to know. This riverbend has always held resentment. People have drowned here for generations. It did not begin only now." The hut fell into silence, broken only by the moan of wind seeping through the cracks in the wall. "Long ago," Madame Dew continued, "there was a young woman named Tham. Orphaned, poor, she made her living scavenging snails and crabs. She was beautiful, more beautiful than any fairy. The district magistrate lusted after her and tried to force her as his concubine. She refused. She ran to the river to escape. But the soldiers caught her, dragged her down, and held her head beneath the water until she stopped breathing." Her voice sank, eyes staring into the dark as though seeing that day again. Her body floated for 3 days and nights. No one dared touch it. They said her eyes were still wide open, her arms still flailing in the current, reaching desperately for life. From then on, whenever someone drowned, villagers saw a young woman's long-haired shadow rising, clutching their legs. The drowned became river ghosts. Trapped forever, they drag others down to take their place. The children whimpered, clinging to their mothers. One young man stammered, "So, those who've died lately will become river ghosts too?" Madame Dew's lips trembled as she slowly nodded. "The more river ghosts, the heavier the grudge. If it is not appeased, this village will not survive." As her words faded, a chilling sound drifted from the riverbank, a wet, gurgling sob that warped into a cackle. The villagers froze, staring wide-eyed at the door. Through the thin mist outside, pale green lights flickered and danced above the water, like dozens of ghostly lanterns swaying in the night. Suddenly, the fire in the hearth sputtered and died, plunging the hut into pitch blackness. And in that suffocating dark, a voice wailed, long and mournful, carrying from the river's depths, "Return, my life." Chapter 4: The One Who Returned from the Water. 3 days after Lou's death, the riverside village was shaken again. At dawn, while the mist still blanketed the land, children went to the shore to gather snails. Suddenly, their screams tore through the morning air. The adults rushed over and froze in shock. There, huddled on the sandy bank, sat little Min, the boy who had vanished a week earlier and whom everyone thought had drowned. His clothes were torn, his hair plastered with mud, his small body shivering. But the joy of his return quickly turned into horror. Min no longer looked like a living child. His eyes were glazed, pupils clouded white like mist. His skin was pale, his lips bluish-purple. The tips of his fingers shriveled and wrinkled as though soaked in water for far too long. When the villagers tried to question him, he only shook his head, mumbling incoherent sounds. His parents embraced him, weeping, but recoiled instantly. His body was as cold as ice, as if they were clutching a block of frozen flesh. That night, while the hut lay in silence, Min suddenly sat up in bed. His wide, glassy eyes stared straight out the window. His father shook him, called his name, but the boy gave no response. After a long silence, he finally whispered clearly, each word like a knife, "The water is so cold, So many hands, they told me. I must stay with them. His father broke into a sweat, stammering in terror. Son, what are you saying? Min slowly turned his head. The corners of his mouth twisted into a crooked smile. Then, without warning, he threw his head back and laughed, high-pitched, echoing, a sound that seemed to surge up from the bottom of the river. The oil lamp on the altar flickered violently. Ancestors' portraits on the wall quivered as though an unseen wind swept through the room. Outside, the faint splash of water sounded, plop, like someone slipping beneath the river. The father clutched his son tightly, but Min's eyes remained clouded, fixed on the window, whispering in a chilling monotone. They are still calling me. Chapter 5: The Nameless Grave. After Min's strange return and his terrifying whispers, no villager dared go near the riverbend. By day it was tolerable, but at night even the faint sound of waves sent chills down spines. Old Man Tu, a fisherman known for his courage, decided to gather a few young men to investigate. If we want to end this curse, he said, we must find its root. People say river ghosts, but where do they come from? They pushed through the thickets of bamboo along the shore. In a secluded bend, they stumbled upon an old mound of earth, a grave covered in wild grass. Without a headstone or inscription, just cracked, dry soil. The group murmured uneasily. Strange, none of us knew a grave was here. Could it be hers? The girl Tham, the one drowned long ago? Tu knelt, brushing away weeds, the moment his hand touched the mound. A rush of icy air escaped, like someone exhaling right at his ear. The dog that had followed them suddenly howled, fur bristling, backing away in terror. It barked frantically at the grave, as if it could see something invisible. One of the young men stammered, face pale, I swear, I just saw a white hand reaching out of the earth. They all staggered back, hearts pounding. The soil atop the mound shifted slightly, the weeds trembling without any wind. From the river beyond came a heavy, hollow splash, whoomp, as if something massive had broken the surface. Waves slapped the shore in ominous rhythm. Old Tu's voice shook. This must be a grave of resentment. Buried without incense or rites, the soul festers, becomes a river ghost to drag the living down. Dusk fell quickly. The men abandoned their shovels and ran, fear snapping at their heels. Yet as they fled, each of them felt it. Footsteps behind them, wet, dragging, squelching as though something rose from the mud to follow them home. That night, villagers near the river swore they heard weeping carried through the mist. Mournful and piercing. Give me back my life. Chapter 6: The Cry in the Night. Night descended, wrapping the riverside village in an unnatural stillness. The moon hung low and blood-red, casting its sickly glow on the murky water below. Everyone bolted their doors, barred their windows, and prayed for silence. But silence did not last long. From the deadly riverbend came a wail, soft at first, like distant sobbing. Slowly, it grew louder, more anguished, twisting into a piercing shriek that seemed to rip through the night. Injustice, injustice? Return my life. Dogs howled in unison, their cries drawn out, mournful as if answering the dead. Children woke screaming, mothers clutched them tight, rocking with trembling arms. Inside his hut, Old Tu lay drenched in sweat. In the haze of half-sleep, he saw her clearly, a woman with hair dripping wet, standing outside his porch. Her face was bowed, water dripping steadily onto the floorboards. The crying grew closer, closer, until it stopped right at his door. The bamboo door shuddered violently, as though clawed by unseen hands. Scratch, 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 the sound of nails raking wood echoed through the night. Suddenly, the oil lamp on the altar sputtered and died, plunging the room into suffocating darkness. And in that void, a damp, cold whisper slid into every ear. Come down with me? Tu's wife screamed and collapsed. He clutched her tight, but when he turned to the window, he froze. Two white, soulless eyes were staring straight back at him from the darkness outside. Beyond the window, the river boiled. In the moonlight, villagers who dared look swore they saw countless pale figures beneath the water, faces blank, hair flowing, arms raised, beckoning silently. The cries swelled again, this time not from one throat but from dozens, perhaps hundreds. A chorus of lamentation rolled through the mist, heavy and unbearable, shaking hearts to breaking. That night, no one in the village slept. And from then on, people whispered in terror. The river no longer held a single ghost. It had become home to an army of the dead. Chapter 7: The Talisman of Exorcism. After that dreadful night, panic gripped the village. People no longer dared step into the river. Even fields nearby were left abandoned. Some whispered of fleeing, of leaving behind their homes to escape the curse. In desperation, the elders sent word for a spirit master named Cone, rumored to have sealed away restless ghosts in many villages. They said his talismans alone could drive spirits into silence. One afternoon, Master Cone arrived with 2 disciples. He was tall and gaunt, beard streaked with white, eyes sunken yet piercing. A horsetail whisk never left his hand. The moment he stepped onto the shore, he frowned deeply. "The resentment here is thick," he muttered. "Not one, but a host of vengeful spirits have gathered." The villagers crowded around, some weeping, some pleading. Cone nodded gravely. "I will erect a warding altar. But listen carefully. Once the talisman is set, none of you must linger near this river again." That night, beneath a pale, sickly moon, the altar was raised on the riverbank. Offerings of incense, rice wine, and paper charms were laid out. The master chanted low, his disciples striking wooden blocks and ringing handbells. With each incantation, the wind rose, the river churned, its surface boiling with unseen fury. From the mist came faint outlines, dripping white shapes with hollow eyes and matted hair. Shrieking in rage, Cone's voice thundered, "Evil spirits, be gone!" He flung his talismans into the air. They ignited with crimson light, fluttering onto the water, burning fiercely before sinking below. The shrieks cut off abruptly. The river grew still. Silence fell. The villagers collapsed to their knees, bowing in relief. The master warned, "This warding will last some years, but you must honor the nameless grave with incense. If you neglect it, resentment will rise again." They agreed fervently, clinging to hope. Yet 3 days later, horror struck once more. The talismans nailed along the riverbank were found shredded, strewn in the mud. Each strip of paper was smeared with a dark, slimy stain, reeking like fish blood. That night, the wails returned, louder, more mournful than ever, and in the rushing wind came mocking laughter. "Your talismans cannot bind me." Chapter 8: The Missing Child. After the talismans were torn apart, faith in Master Cone collapsed. No one believed the spirits could be driven away. Adults forbade their children from going near the water. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. One sweltering afternoon, 3 boys, Tam, Wah, and the youngest, Quang, snuck to the riverbank. They wanted to prove the elders' stories were nothing but superstition. "We'll just stand here a while and go back," Tam scoffed. He hurled a stone into the river. It struck the surface with a hollow plop. Ripples spread outward. Then the water stilled again. The boys laughed nervously, but Quang suddenly froze, pointing with a trembling finger. Look, someone's down there." Beneath the cloudy surface, a pale face emerged. Long, dripping hair framed lifeless eyes staring upward. The lips parted slowly, purple and stiff, revealing teeth as white as bone. And the mouth moved, forming a whisper that seemed to rise into their ears. "Come, here!" The boys screamed and bolted. Only when they had run several steps did Tam and Wah realize Quang was no longer with them. Behind them, the river splashed violently. Red swirls spread across the surface like blooming flowers of blood. They screamed his name, but nothing answered. Only a small sandal floated up, entangled in slimy moss. Word of Quang's disappearance spread like wildfire. His parents collapsed in grief on the bank, their cries mingling with the stench of river mud. But from the water came a voice, cold, mocking, sorrowful. "Stay with me?" That night, as villagers combed the shore in vain, some swore they saw the child standing upright on the water. He smiled faintly, arms stretched out, waiting for someone to take his hand. Chapter 9: The Figure Beneath the Water. After young Quang's disappearance, fear strangled the riverside village. By day, the water lay eerily calm, no fish rose, no ripples stirred. But at night, the river turned gray and foul, the moon casting twisted shapes across its surface. One evening, a young fisherman named Keem dared to challenge the curse. He paddled his small boat into the bend, determined to cast his net and prove the ghost stories false. The boat drifted slowly. Keem raised his net, but his arms froze midway. Beneath the surface, a face was staring back at him. A woman's face, chalk white, with strands of hair spreading like black weeds. Her eyes rolled upward, pupils vanished into white, her mouth gaping, froth bubbling between her lips. Keem's blood ran cold. He yanked his net, but it dragged heavy, as if hooked onto something deep below. Suddenly, a pale hand burst from the water, clutching the side of his boat. The vessel lurched violently, nearly capsizing. Keem shrieked, rowing frantically toward the bank. But when he staggered ashore, what he saw froze him in terror. In the pale moonlight, dozens, no, hundreds, of faces hovered just beneath the water. Blank, swollen, hair drifting like seaweed, dead eyes staring straight up at him. They neither sank nor floated away, but lingered just below the surface like a mirror to the underworld. Every face was a drowned corpse, yet all grinned grotesquely. Lips twisted in deathly smiles. Keem dropped his net, stumbling back, heart pounding. Even as he ran, the whispers slithered after him, curling in his ears. One life is not enough. That night, Keem raved with fever, tossing and muttering in delirium. His hands clawed at his legs as though prying off invisible fingers dragging him down. The next morning, villagers swore they saw her again, the woman beneath the water. She sat serenely on the river's surface, hair plastered across her face. Keem's abandoned net tangled in her hands. Her milky eyes still stared toward the shore. Chapter 10: The Forbidden Rumor. After the night, Keem saw countless drowned faces in the river. Terror deepened. Whispers spread like wildfire. An old taboo, once only murmured on nights of the full moon, now spoken openly across the village. The elders warned, never look into the river on the night of the full moon. For if you do, the river ghosts will show themselves. They will stand below the surface, beckoning, and if you so much as meet their gaze, they will claim you, pulling you down forever. Some swore that on such nights, if one gazed into the water, they would see not only the ghosts but their own reflection, distorted. Lips blue, face pale like a corpse, a sign that the spirits had marked them as the next sacrifice. The rumor spread, suffocating the village. No one dared fetch water at night, even by day. They carried garlic, salt, or knives to ward off spirits. But youthful arrogance is dangerous. One evening, a group of young men, drunk and scornful, decided to test the curse. All nonsense, one jeered. Tomorrow is the full moon. I'll look straight into the river's face. If there are ghosts, let them drag me down. The full moon rose, casting silver light across the bend. The men gathered at the bank, laughing loudly. One bold youth leaned down, eyes locked on the water. At first, only the moon and his reflection stared back. But then, the image shifted, his reflected face twisted pale, eyes rolling white, mouth stretching grotesquely wide, splitting into a horrific grin. The boy screamed, trying to pull away, but pale, dripping hands shot from the water, seizing his legs. He thrashed wildly as his friends grabbed at him, but the unseen force was too strong. With one violent tug, he was dragged beneath. Water splashed, foamed, then silence. The river lay calm again, as if nothing had happened. But from then on, those who dared look into the river swore they saw a new face among the dead, pale and warped, grinning hideously from the depths. Forever a part of the river's cursed reflection. Chapter 11: The Night of Rising Winds. That night, the sky darkened suddenly, though the full moon still hung high. A violent wind tore through the village without warning of storm or rain. Bamboo groves rattled, thatched roofs groaned, and even bolted doors shook as if they would rip from their frames. The once still river erupted, waves crashing and spiraling into whirlpools as though stirred by monstrous hands. Mist rolled in thick from the water, creeping into every hut, its icy sting piercing like needles into skin. But the wind did not howl like mere weather. It moaned, shrieked, wept, sounding like the cries of the drowned. The villagers sat trembling in their homes, listening. Then came the voices, rising from the heart of the river. Come down with us." In old Tu's house, the oil lamp sputtered and died. Darkness smothered the room. Dogs howled and roosters shrieked in terror. At the riverbank, villagers glimpsed ghastly shapes, figures swaying atop the waves, hair long and dripping, garments tattered like burial shrouds. The wind blew hard, yet their hair fell straight down. veiling their faces. A child, too curious, cracked open the door. At once, a force pulled him outward, like invisible hands dragging him to the river. His father lunged just in time, yanking him back, but the man's skin crawled in horror. The boy's small hand was icy, slick, and dripping as if it had been submerged in the depths. All night, the voices haunted the village. Sometimes they came from far away, muffled like echoes from beneath the riverbed. Other times they whispered right at one's ear. Intimate and suffocating, splashes punctuated the cries, water spraying though no one dared look outside. When dawn finally broke and the wind stilled, people crept out. Their blood froze. On the wet sand lay rows of bare footprints, small and large, muddy and soaked, trailing from the river into the village. The footprints ended before a house, one that had just lost a child to the water. Chapter 12. The wet corpse in the house. The morning after the night of rising winds, terror struck again. At dawn, Mrs. Tho, mother of the lost boy Kwon, opened her door and screamed. Across the ground, a wet trail stretched from the yard straight into her house. Villagers rushed over, only to stop dead in horror. The damp trail continued through the doorway, marked with clear bare footprints, muddy, dripping, small like those of a child. They led directly to the bamboo bed where Kwon had once slept. The bed was soaked through. The mat sagged under the weight of stagnant water, cold and foul-smelling. The whole room reeked of river slime. Mrs. Tho collapsed onto the floor, trembling, whispering through sobs, my son has come back." The crowd shuddered. Then, plop, a sound echoed from the darkened corner of the hut. Water dripped steadily onto the floor, heavy and deliberate, as though from a drenched body standing unseen. A small figure appeared by the doorway of the inner room. Hair hung in clumps, clothes in tatters, water streaming down onto the earth floor. A child's pale face, eyes glazed, mouth trembling. "Mother," the voice gurgled, warped, as if strangled by water. "I'm so cold." Tho wailed and rushed forward to embrace him. But the instant she touched him, the figure melted into a puddle of black, stinking water, soaking her arms. She fainted where she fell. The villagers staggered back in terror. From the window came eerie laughter, high, wet, mingling with the sound of sobbing. The trail of water slowly receded, sliding toward the door and vanishing. Only the footprints remained, leading outward once more, back to the river. That night, throughout the village, a child's voice drifted in the mist, calling, calling, sometimes far, sometimes so near it seemed to echo within each house. Mother. Chapter 13. The lantern beneath the water. After the horror in Mrs. Tho's house, the village was paralyzed with fear. No one dared draw water from the bend. Even daily cooking required trips to a distant well in another hamlet. Yet 3 reckless young men, including Kim, the fisherman who once saw the faces of the drowned, resolved to uncover the truth. Armed with ropes, knives, and a remaining talisman from Master Cone, they paddled a small boat into the bend at midnight. The river was ink black, mist hanging thick. The crescent moon slipped behind clouds, leaving only faint streaks of pallid light. One by one, they tied ropes around their waists and plunged into the depths. The water bit into their flesh, cold beyond endurance. The deeper they swam, the darker it grew, until the world was nothing but their pounding hearts and the hiss of bubbles breaking. Suddenly, Kim froze. Before him, in the void, glowed a red lantern. It floated eerily, light flickering like a will-o'-the-wisp. Its glow illuminated the water around it, revealing corpses drifting everywhere, hair tangled like weeds, faces swollen and pale, eyes open and white. Kim, trembling, reached out, but no matter how hard he swam, the lantern stayed always just out of reach. The closer he drew, the more its light deepened into crimson, blazing into his eyes. Then came the hands, dozens of them, pale and slimy, clawed from every direction, clutching his arms, his legs. They dragged him downward, deeper, deeper. Kim's scream gurgled in a storm of bubbles. "Help me!" Above, his friends tugged at the rope, but something below pulled harder, as if an army of the drowned conspired to drag him away. Kim's body jerked violently between the two forces. At the last moment, the rope snapped taut, hauling him upward. He burst to the surface, coughing water, trembling like a man half dead. His skin was icy, lips purple, eyes wide with horror. He managed only a hoarse whisper. "At the bottom. A red lantern, it's calling us down." That night, no one in the village slept. For out on the bend, through the shifting mist, a faint red glow flickered beneath the water, like a colossal, unblinking eye watching, waiting. Chapter 14 The Possessed One. Ever since Keem was dragged from the river, the villagers noticed he was no longer the same. At first, it was only fevers that came and went, his skin cold as stone. But soon, something far more disturbing took hold. At night, Keem would sit motionless on the porch, eyes wide open, fixed on the riverbend. No matter how his family called or shook him, he did not respond, only muttered faintly, "The water, so cold, so many hands, they're calling me." One night, his mother woke to find him crouched in the middle of the hut. His hair dripped with water, clothes clinging with slime, puddles spreading across the floor. Terrified, she asked, "Son, where have you been?" Slowly, Keem turned. His eyes were milky white. His lips curled into a crooked grin. "I went down, with them." From that night onward, children cried whenever he passed. Dogs barked frantically. Cats arched their backs and bolted. Adults avoided his gaze, for his eyes no longer seemed human, hollow, chilling, like deep currents swirling within. One moonlit night, Keem vanished. Villagers found him at dawn, crouched on the sandy bank. He laughed into the fog, waving toward the river as though greeting invisible companions. When they tried to drag him back, he thrashed violently, shrieking like a madman, "Let me go, I must go with them. Down there is my true home." It took 4 men to restrain him, even bound in ropes. He cackled endlessly, his laughter echoing like the gurgle of drowning from beneath the river. That same night, something even more terrifying appeared. Dark, bruise-like marks bloomed across his arms, handprints. Small, skeletal, childlike fingers seemed to press into his flesh, each mark oozing foul water reeking of moss and mud. The villagers whispered in terror, "He's possessed by the river ghosts. Soon, he'll drag another soul down with him." Chapter 15 The Old Photograph. While the villagers trembled over Keem's possession, Old Two, the gray-haired fisherman, resolved to investigate further. He believed the key to ending the curse lay within the nameless grave by the riverbank. One dusky afternoon, he and several elders dug around the bamboo grove. Beneath the damp soil, they unearthed a rotting wooden box. Its lock rusted and brittle. The moment the lid cracked open, a rancid odor seeped out, making them gag. Inside lay scraps of burial cloth and, nestled among them, an old black and white photograph. It depicted a young woman, her face delicate, her eyes round and sorrowful. Her long hair blew to one side, revealing a half-smile, gentle yet burdened with grief. The men whispered uneasily, "Could this be Tham, the girl drowned in injustice long ago?" Then realization struck. The woman's face in the photo was identical to the figure haunting the river. The pale woman with long hair that villagers had seen again and again. They placed the photo on the table. Yet no matter where one stood, her eyes seemed to follow. The room grew heavy under that gaze, sad, yet piercing. That night, as Two studied the photograph under lamplight, a splash sounded outside his window, plop. He turned sharply, and in the mist he saw her, standing waist deep in the river. Hair dripping, smile twisted, eyes milky white staring straight at him. His blood ran cold. He spun back to the table. But the photo was no longer the same. Her face had vanished, leaving only a blank, ghostly sheet. From the river came laughter, shrill, broken, mingling with sobs. "Return my life." By morning, the villagers found the photo soaked through, water dripping onto the table though the hut was dry. Her face had returned, but no longer gentle. Now her eyes were void, corpse white, glaring from within the frame. Chapter 16 The Ritual of Exorcism. After the old photograph appeared and warped, dread swallowed the village. All were convinced now. The restless spirit was indeed the girl named Tham, and the river ghosts were born from her boundless grudge. The elders gathered in urgency. At last, they summoned Master Cone once more, begging him to perform a ritual of exorcism to release the spirit. Though his first attempt had failed, there was no other hope. On the night of the full moon, an altar was erected by the riverbank. Offerings crowded the table: roasted pig, a rooster, rice wine, incense. and golden paper. In the center stood the photograph of the girl, framed in wood and wrapped with red cloth. Master Cone donned his ceremonial robe, whisk in hand, while his 2 disciples beat wooden blocks and rang bells. The villagers knelt, foreheads pressed to the earth, too afraid to raise their eyes. As the incense burned halfway, the river erupted, waves churned, mist surged upward, icy winds rattled the trees. The photograph on the altar quivered, the girl's eyes glowing faintly. Glaring at Cone, he raised his voice, commanding, "O spirit of grievance, if you suffer, show yourself, so that I may release you." The chant swelled, bells clanged. Suddenly, a piercing laugh tore through the mist, tangled with a sobbing cry. The water frothed violently, and out of the haze emerged dozens of dripping figures, hair plastered, eyes white, mouths gaping as they crawled from the depths. The villagers shrieked. Some tried to flee but found their legs heavy. Frozen to the earth, Cone brandished his whisk, hurling a blazing talisman into the river. It burst with a crack, glowing red as it struck, scattering the pale shadows. For a moment, silence. Then the river roared louder, waves clawing at the bank. Hands, ghastly, wet, skeletal, reached up from the current, seizing at the altar, as though to drag it into the water. The altar's flames sputtered out. Darkness swallowed the bank, and in that suffocating void rose a woman's voice, trembling with grief and hate. "You buried me alive? I will never forgive you. You will all die with me." The wind screamed, the river howled, and the lament of countless souls filled the night air. The altar shook, threatening to collapse into the furious waves. Cone, pale and drenched with sweat, shouted above the cacophony, "Hold the talisman steady. If we falter now, the entire village will perish." Chapter 17 The Preserved Corpse Beneath. After the failed ritual of exorcism, the village descended into chaos. Some fainted, others wailed in terror. Even Master Cone admitted grimly, "The resentment cannot be banished by rites alone. We must uncover the grave itself." The next morning, a group of young men and elders returned to the thicket where the nameless grave lay. The soil was damp, soft as if disturbed. Their shovels struck hard wood. Hearts pounding, they unearthed a rotting coffin. The boards crumbled at a touch, eaten away by years of damp. With trembling hands, they pried it open. Inside was no skeleton. Instead lay a young woman's corpse, eerily intact. Her skin was pale, flesh full and swollen yet preserved, as if death had come only yesterday. Her long black hair spilled across her body, slick with mud. Most horrifying were her eyes, wide open, clouded white, still staring upward in frozen terror. Her mouth gaped, forever caught in a scream. The villagers recoiled. One muttered hoarsely, "Gods, she hasn't rotted. This must be the river ghost herself." A stench, rank and suffocating, poured from the coffin. The air grew colder, pressing against their lungs. Then, movement. The corpse's fingers twitched. Her pale hand rose slowly, clutching the coffin's rim. The men screamed, stumbling back. Tools clattered into the dirt. One elder collapsed, eyes rolling in shock. With a wet crack, the corpse sat upright. Her hair slithered down, dripping black water. Streams of foul liquid poured from her mouth as her lips trembled. "You will return my life?" Her voice shrieked across the riverbank. The river itself surged, frothing white, and from its depths, countless shadows surfaced, bodies slick with rot, hair streaming, eyes white and unblinking, staring toward the villagers. And in the blazing sunlight of noon, the deadly riverbend boiled like a gateway to the underworld. Chapter 18 The night the river ghosts rose. That night, though the moon shone bright, the sky dimmed as if swallowed by shadow. A heavy mist crawled from the river, seeping into the village, cold as blades of ice-piercing skin. The villagers huddled in their homes, hearts pounding. From the river came a thunderous roar, and those who dared peek outside cried out in horror. The river was no longer water. It was a field of corpses, dozens, hundreds, drifting just beneath the surface. Faces bloated and pale, hair spread like weeds, all eyes wide open, all staring at the shore. Suddenly, a voice thundered across the night, shrill with grief and rage. "All of you will die with me." The river surged upward in colossal waves, crashing onto the bank, flooding the village paths. From the current shot out white, skeletal hands, clutching, dragging down anything they seized. A woman screamed as her husband was ripped from her arms, leaving only his straw hat floating. A child was wrenched from its mother's grasp, its cries swallowed by the tide. The air rang with a chorus of laughter, sobs, and wails. The village was drowned in chaos. The nameless grave, disturbed and split, spewed black resentment into the mist. And then she appeared, the young woman wronged long ago. Her corpse-like figure hovered above the water, face ghastly pale, eyes milky, hair streaming in sodden tangles. Her torn dress clung to her with mud and blood. She raised a hand toward the villagers, her voice shrieking like metal tearing. "You will all repay me with your lives." The river raged like a living beast. Water rose against its current, surging into the village, carrying with it hordes of river ghosts. They crawled ashore, dragging themselves on bellies, leaving slimy trails that reeked of rot. People ran screaming, scattering into the night, but no matter where they fled, pale figures loomed, breath cold, hands clammy, eyes blank as death. That night, the village became hell on earth. And above it all, the voice echoed, calling, calling, "Come down with me." Chapter 19: The Sacrifice. After the night the river ghosts rose. The village lay in ruins. Cries of mourning filled the air, husbands gone, children lost, homes abandoned to the flood. Survivors huddled in the communal hall, faces hollow, eyes wild with terror. Master Cone sat slumped before the extinguished incense, his voice hoarse. The girl's spirit has become a vengeful demon. Only one way remains. A life must be given in her place. A sacrifice. Only then will she relent. The hall fell into dead silence. No one dared breathe. To surrender a life to save the rest, who could bear it? Then old Two rose slowly, leaning on his cane. His white hair gleamed in the dim light, his eyes no longer weary but resolved. "I have lived long by this river. The young should not die for the old. Let me go. I will take her place." Shouts erupted. "No, you can't. There must be another way. Old man, you'll be killed." But Two only shook his head, his voice steady as stone. "There is no other way. If not me, the whole village will perish." That night, beneath the wan moon, Two walked alone to the riverbank. In his hand he carried a single incense stick, glowing red in the wind, and the old photograph of the girl. He knelt by the water's edge, voice trembling yet resolute. "Tham, if your soul lingers in torment, take this old life in exchange. Spare the village." The river stilled for a breath, then swelled with waves. Mist churned as her figure rose from the depths, hair streaming, eyes blank, a twisted smile splitting her pale face. From afar, the villagers watched and wept. They saw the pale hands emerge, clutching Two's body. He fell forward into the current, whispering with his last breath, "Protect them, please." In an instant, he was gone. The water foamed red, then calmed. Her laughter faded into silence. The river grew still. That night, for the first time, there were no wails, no cries, no ghostly calls, only silence, an eerie, heavy silence. The villagers whispered. Two had given himself to the river. And for now, the curse was sated. Chapter 20: The Bloodstained Dawn. Morning broke after the sacrifice. The mist dissolved. The river lay still as glass. For the first time in many moons, no cries echoed from its depths. One by one, villagers crept from their homes. Gathering on the sandy bank, they stood in silence, staring at the calm waters, hearts caught between relief and dread. An elder whispered, voice quavering, "Old Two, he saved us all." The last stick of incense from the night before still smoldered in the sand, curling smoke into the dawn. On that spot, the villagers built a makeshift altar, laying offerings and bowing low. Tears mingled with the river breeze. But the peace was short-lived. As the sun lifted above the bamboo groves, its light painted the water in hues of crimson. On the shore, villagers froze in horror. Footprints, wet, bare, muddied, stretched from the riverbank deep into the village. Not one pair, but many, large prints, small prints, side by side, as if a whole procession had risen from the water. Children wailed, adults clutched each other. They followed the trail, trembling, until it ended at doorways of several houses. Some saw streaks of dampness across their walls, beads of water trickling down like tears, carrying the stench of rot. And inside one hut, Scrawled across the wooden floorboards in smears of dark, wet crimson, were 3 words: not enough. Silence fell over the village, heavy as death. The still river mocked them with its calm surface, concealing what lay beneath. They understood now. Tu's sacrifice had not appeased her. The river waited. The dawn blazed bright, but to the villagers, it was drenched in blood. And the curse of the river ghosts was far from over. The villagers believed old Tu's sacrifice had silenced the river. For one night, there were no cries, no shadows rising from the depths. Hope returned, fragile as morning mist. But when dawn bled red across the water, wet footprints stretched from the river into the heart of the village. On the wooden floor of a hut, 3 chilling words dripped in blood: not enough. The curse lingered still, and the nightmare had only begun.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost